Behind the veil, Princess Leonor Emotional Denmark ceremony revealed. Everyone saw the wedding, but not everyone saw what happened behind the veil. The world witnessed perfection, the glistening crown, the golden aisle, the cheers echoing through Copenhagen's ancient cathedral. But what if I told you that behind those flawless smiles, there were tears, whispers, and moments the cameras almost missed? Because Princess Leonor's wedding, the most anticipated royal event of 2025, was not just a ceremony. It was an emotional storm disguised as a fairy tale. And today, for the first time, the truth from behind that veil is being revealed. It began long before the music started. Hours before the world turned its gaze toward Denmark, Leonor stood alone in her dressing chamber, quiet, composed, yet trembling. Surrounded by stylists, her sister Infanta Sofia, and her mother Queen Letizia, she seemed radiant. But those who were there said her silence spoke louder than words. As the veil was gently placed over her head, Leonor's eyes welled up. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't fear. It was realization. The realization that this was more than a royal duty, it was a goodbye. Goodbye to the life she knew. Goodbye to her private self. Goodbye to the little girl Spain had watched grow up. They say Queen Letizia whispered something then. Something that made Leonor smile through her tears. A phrase only a mother could say in that moment. Ve con el corazón. Siempre con el corazón. Go with your heart. Always with your heart. That moment, captured in a quiet photograph later released by the royal house, melted millions. But it was more than an emotional snapshot, it was the passing of strength from one queen to the next. And as the church bells began to toll across Copenhagen, Leonor exhaled. Her destiny was calling. When the doors of the cathedral opened, the world gasped. Her gown shimmered under the light, an intricate masterpiece designed by Spanish and Danish artists. Each thread told a story: unity, tradition, modern grace. The veil, delicate as mist, carried hand-embroidered petals of both nations' flowers, red Spanish carnations intertwined with Danish white daisies. Every detail spoke of peace between heritage and future. But for Leonor, it wasn't fashion. It was symbolism. It was a bridge between who she was, and who she was about to become. As she stepped forward, her heart raced. Behind her, Letizia fought to stay composed. Next to her, King Felipe clenched his jaw, a father trying to hold back the emotion of seeing his daughter step into the life of a queen. Observers noticed it immediately, that single tear that escaped Letizia's eye as Leonor reached the halfway mark down the aisle. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't for show. It was real. Because this wasn't just a royal ceremony. It was a farewell to innocence. And then came the groom, Crown Prince Christian of Denmark. He stood at the altar, his posture perfect, his expression calm, until his eyes met hers. That glance changed everything. The world saw it. The world felt it. A connection that seemed to exist outside of royal duty, two heirs, two worlds, one heartbeat. Christian took a deep breath, visibly emotional, as she approached. When their hands touched, something shifted in the room, the stiff formality of royalty melted into raw, genuine love. It was the kind of moment that didn't need commentary. It spoke for itself. The ceremony was filled with layers of emotion. When the priest began to speak in both Spanish and Danish, the blending of languages created a kind of sacred harmony. Even the air felt thick with meaning, centuries of monarchy condensed into one single union. And then, the vows. Leonor's voice trembled. Her accent carried the softness of Madrid, the dignity of Asturias. Her words in Spanish echoed through the cathedral. Prometo amar con la verdad, y servir con el alma. I promise to love with truth, and to serve with my soul. Christian's voice followed, firm, heartfelt, unmistakably genuine. I choose you, not just for our kingdoms, but for the life between them. The crowd exhaled collectively. Some smiled. Others cried. Even Queen Margrethe was seen dabbing her eyes. But the most powerful moment came not from what was said, but from what was felt. When Leonor lifted her veil after the vows, she hesitated. Just a second too long. And in that brief pause, every layer of royal decorum faded. For that instant, she wasn't a princess. She was simply Leonor, a young woman in love, overwhelmed by the gravity of it all. That hesitation was the heartbeat of the entire ceremony. The pause that said more than any royal speech ever could. Behind the veil, whispers spread through the royal circle. Rumors of last-minute nerves, of emotional confessions shared between sisters before the ceremony. Sources later revealed that Sophia, who had stayed by Leonor's side all morning, had said something remarkable right before she walked out. "Remember, you're not leaving us. You're carrying us with you." Those words followed Leonor down that aisle like a blessing. And when the music swelled, and she reached the altar, the moment transformed from a royal tradition into a deeply human story, one of love, family, courage, and transition. After the vows, the sunlight streamed through the cathedral's stained glass, illuminating Leonor's face in radiant color. Photographers later called it the divine frame. It wasn't staged. It was a coincidence, or perhaps something more. Because that light, shining directly onto her, made her look every bit the future queen she was destined to be. The crowd erupted into applause. And as the couple walked down the aisle as husband and wife, every step felt like a new chapter in European history. Outside, Copenhagen was electric. Spanish and Danish flags danced side by side in the wind. The cheers were deafening. But in the carriage, just before they waved to the public, Leonor turned to Christian and whispered something the microphones couldn't catch. Lip readers caught it later. "Promise me we'll stay real." That phrase instantly went viral. Because it wasn't a royal statement. It was a plea, the universal hope of anyone in love. That no matter the power, no matter the titles, they would remain human. Later that evening, during the private reception at Amalienborg Palace, a more intimate story unfolded. The cameras were gone. The protocol was relaxed. And that's when Leonor finally let her emotions surface. She hugged her parents tightly. She danced with her sister barefoot in the ballroom. She laughed, cried, and even joined the Danish band for a brief, joyful moment, a side of her the world rarely sees. Guests said she seemed lighter, as if the crown on her head no longer felt like a burden, but a purpose. In Spain, millions watched the broadcast on giant screens. Crowds filled plazas, waving flags and singing. For the first time in decades, Spain felt united under one emotion, pride. Because Leonor had done what few could, she brought authenticity to royalty. She showed that even within the walls of tradition, there is room for heart, for tears, for being real. When night fell over Copenhagen, the newlyweds appeared on the palace balcony for their final wave. The sky behind them glowed pink and gold. Christian's hand rested gently on Leonor's back. And for a few quiet seconds, she looked out, not at the crowd, but at the horizon. You could almost see her thinking. This was no longer the end of her childhood. It was the beginning of a reign built on compassion and courage. Those close to her later said she had one final private moment, standing before the mirror, still in her gown, veil resting on the table beside her. She touched the embroidery and whispered softly to herself, "Behind the veil, I found myself." That single sentence became the headline of the night. It summed up everything. Because this ceremony wasn't just about love, it was about identity. About the girl behind the crown finding her own light through love, duty, and destiny. And as Spain and Denmark celebrated deep into the night, one thing was clear. Princess Leonor's story is no longer just royal history, it's human history. A story of vulnerability and strength. Of family bonds, quiet courage, and a future queen who dared to show her heart. Behind the veil, she didn't just find love. She found purpose. She found power in her humanity. And she showed the world that even the most untouchable royals still bleed, still dream, and still feel. Because true royalty lives not in the crown, but in the heart that beats beneath it.